Welcome everyone to the Veloce Race Review. I'm Pat Brown.
And I'm Austin Banks, and today we'll be reviewing the Solstice cross race down in Emmaus, Pennsylvania.
So believe it or not, there was actually no snow on the ground the morning when we showed up here. The snow came down fast, and it made for very slick conditions. So you can see here we're going into the start. There are a little bit of off-camber sections, corners right here. So how did you get through those? Did you end up running them at all?
It was definitely hard to. Well, you had a ton of speed, and everyone else had a ton of speed too. So running wasn't really an option. You were kind of thrown all over the place, and hopefully no one would be trying to pass you in those corners because they were so slick. I mean, as you can see, this guy's putting his foot out and just trying to keep his tires on the ground, trying not to slide out.
Yeah, so this is actually, Austin, this is your footage that we're going through here, which I think will be interesting, kind of getting a different racing style, perhaps. Taking different lines. So I think that'll be interesting to kind of go through, too, how your riding style might be a little bit different than both Aaron and I's.
Yeah. Well, as you could even so the corners, see he's putting his foot down again. The corners were hard enough, and even the straightaways were hard. There were a few times where I'd just start putting power down and my rear wheel would just start to come out, or my front tire would just start to come out. And pretty much every corner, everyone's putting their foot down. It's hard to keep your line.
So with these slick conditions, what kind of tire pressures were you running?
About 25.
In front and back there?
Yeah. Wasn't low enough.
Yeah, and what tire width were you running?
35C.
35. Okay, yeah. I mean, you got to try to get as much grip as you can and get that any way you can.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Especially, they've made a few changes. We've done a race review on roughly the same course here earlier in the season, which it was actually my first race, and you can see that the conditions are vastly different, and we're taking a lot of different lines, and how you actually race it is quite different. Like now you're putting down some good power here. We're getting the speed up.
Yeah.
But I know when I was racing this is where you'd make up or you'd pass a lot of guys, where I feel like once you're in that rut, is it difficult to get out of it?
Yeah. Well, the corners were so bad, you had to even use these straightaways as an opportunity to gain some time. Obviously, people aren't passing each other too much. It's spread out really quick.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you're more of like a technical rider, or really like a power-driven, like you got it on the straights? Or?
I would say technical, even though I did go down a few times. I'd say I handled the bike pretty well. There were a couple guys that handled it better than I did, but...
Yeah, so, I mean, we went over barriers, which you were running on the backside every time, right?
Yeah.
But I know on the front side, we're going to get, a little bit later in the video, you actually running over those. Did you get a chance to ride those barriers? They were quite small.
On the first lap, I did, and all the the reason I ran it on the first lap, because I was trying to keep the mud out of my cleats and pedals. But all after the first lap, you couldn't clip in at all. The second lap, there was 2 opportunities where the pedals just happened to slide in, but after that, your cleats were so gummed up with mud and the pedals were just frozen. You couldn't clip in the whole entire race, and everyone was having that same issue.
Mm-hmm.
So
I remember seeing a lot of people, especially on the podiums, where the riders still had their shoes on, but they were walking around, and they had I want to say 3 centimeters or more of snow just packed on the bottom.
Yeah,
it's just I would say it was a pretty wet and packy snowfall, which, I mean, that just makes it tough.
Mm-hmm. And getting to the race, I thought the ground was going to be frozen, and it was the complete opposite. I mean, it was snow and just mud. That's it.
Yeah, so what would you say was the most difficult part of the course here today?
Oof.
I mean, I know there are a lot of difficult sections there.
It was just trying to keep your line in the corners. It was... I started getting so frustrated towards the end of the race because I'd be being so careful and just trying to handle the bike so well, and it would just slide out. And you had no control over it.
Yeah. Well, it's better than last week we had Aaron was riding and he didn't have a back brake. Yeah, that was difficult.
Yeah.
So I believe we're coming up here. You can see periodically there are a lot of like footsteps, which just showed people were having mechanicals just because their back wheels weren't able to turn. They got so clogged up with snow and mud. Mm-hmm. So, but I believe we're going to be approaching the pump track here in probably about 30 seconds or so.
Well, coming into this, I was like, okay, I can carry a lot of speed, and you'll see here, I just slid out. Like, you had no control over it. You'll see here. My front wheel just went right out, and I slid on my back probably.
Yeah, the guy's
like 4 or 5 feet. Yeah, right there. It was just like, it just took me off guard. And then trying to stand back up, you're trying to run, and your feet are sliding. And he passed me there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like staying smooth this whole race. That was just, if you could be smooth, hold your line, try not to dab the brakes as much as you can. I feel like that was probably the best way to go with this.
Yeah, you could not hit your front brake. That was not an option.
So besides tire pressure, was there any other ways that you prepped your bike? I heard some people were doing a few different things.
Yeah, and I didn't, because I wasn't expecting the course to be like this, but the pros and stuff, they were putting antifreeze on their pedals and Armor All on their frames, which I never even heard of before. But
yeah, I hadn't before today either. That's very interesting. So people were spraying Armor All on their tires. Yeah, and then their whole bikes with antifreeze, right? I'm surprised that actually worked, because I feel like throughout the day the antifreeze and stuff would kind of fall off the bike with all the snow, but apparently
it helped.
It works pretty good. Yeah,
the pump track was actually. People thought that would be the hardest part for some reason, but it wasn't sloppy at all. It was packed, and it was probably the most relieving section. And then after the pump track, right here, it was, again, this same corner was just so muddy, and just trying to keep a few laps, I went down pretty good in that corner. You just slide right out.
So this is the category 3-4. You actually ended up clinching the PACX for that category, so the overall for that. How did you end up on today? Where did you finish out? I
finished 5th. My goal was top 3. I still wanted to finish the season well, and I wanted to do well in this race, but I just trying to keep my feet on. And here. Yeah,
this is an off camber.
Yeah. A lot of people kept running this. I was able to ride it a few times, because if you went all the way to the right, the ground was frozen, and you had better traction in the frozen part than you did in the mud part.
Were a lot of people taking that outside line, or?
No, a lot of people were just getting off and running.
Gotcha.
But back to the PACX. Yeah, I got 5th in this race. My goal was top 3. Going into it, and the last lap I lost those 2 places. I was holding 3rd. I thought I had it locked in, but I wasn't physically tired, but I just couldn't I couldn't hold my line. So
you could see after the race, I was checking out your bike, and there was a lot of mud and snow, where if you were just just moving your bike along the ground, your rear wheel was stuck in place because of all the snow.
Wouldn't turn. Yep. And my dad was trying to get all the frozen mud out of the wheel, and it still wouldn't budge. And finally, after like halfway walking to the car, it finally broke free.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a lot of power. Say if you're a power guy in these kind of conditions, one, you're not going to be able to put as much power down on the straights because, or you're not going to go as fast just because, your bike is all gunked up, and also,
this guy must have thought I was crazy. Every time I passed him, I think I fell.
Oh, no.
Because you put the power down, you get speed going, and then a corner would come up, and if you touched your brake at all, you went right down.
So you can see here, just on the camera.
Yeah, I kept trying to clean it up.
It's just accumulating, yeah. So it's even during the race, you see we have the barriers here. You end up running this section.
Yeah, you couldn't clip in anyway, so it wasn't any faster to ride them. I was just trying to try different things because there was no proper way.
Yeah. So I know this corner was the same as the first race that I did in Emmaus. And even, I can see it's so slick, and that's all off camber. And so when I raced that, and it was, dry conditions, it was fairly warm out, people had issues going around that corner when it was dry.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine racing that with this poor of weather conditions.
Here, a lot of guys most guys would take off at this point and carry all their speed through these corners here.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys were just not even pedaling, just trying to hammer all the mud out of their cleats. It wasn't working, but even I was trying to do it. I kept trying to stomp just so I could get clipped in because it is so, you don't realize how much clips help you during a race until you don't have them anymore. And you couldn't even put your foot on the pedal where the clip would be because there was so much ice in between. You had to put it like in the ball of the shoe, and it was just so
like right in the center of the arch there.
So uncomfortable on your knees and.
Ooh. Yeah, especially if you have a toe. Like I have a toe down pedal stroke, so at the bottom, I'll actually be toed down a little bit. So that kind of increases my seat height a little bit. So if I don't have that, then I'm sure I would be in quite a place of bother here.
Yeah, that's why my first lap was the best because I was able to clip in, but it was so awkward riding without them.
So how is this section here? I know it was a little bit rooty when I raced it. Did that cause any issues?
There were a couple routes that after you went over them, you might have got a little squirrely, but you were able to carry enough speed. You were kind of just had to try and keep weight off the bike.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you can kind of absorb those bumps there.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say this is a very exciting finish to a long and really cool season.
Awesome
I'd say.
season, yeah.
Yeah, it was my first time getting on the cross bike, and I'm definitely going to be doing it next year. Hopefully, I'll get an actual cross bike of my own, and maybe we'll see if we can race a little bit more together.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So great venue. Really enjoyed it, even though I didn't race. Definitely one that I'm going to be going to next year.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well that about does it for the Veloce Race review of the Solstice Cross. I'm Pat Brown.
And I'm Austin Banks.
We'll catch you next time.